Building relationships is one of the three practices in the Culture and Climate Playbook. For many of us, connecting with our students is a natural component of being an educator. In D303, building relationships is a Tier 1 practice, not only because it is vital for learning to occur, but also because students are more likely to exhibit resilience when faced with challenges. It is an ongoing and deliberate practice that ensures all members feel included and valued. Learning requires positive relationships. There are two types: adult educator to student and student to student. A trauma invested approach to students helps to initiate and then foster lasting connections to students. Through this approach, adult educators will know how to identify and respond to student needs that might be interfering with their learning. Student to student interaction is the foundation of engagement in the learning environment. When students are practicing social distancing, it is more important than ever to provide them with opportunities to have a social presence among their peers as they engage in new content and critical thinking. First, let's look at how our mind frames as educators can help students develop a sense of trust so that learning can occur. Tip number one: drop your personal mirror. When working with students in a remote environment, we must remember that variables out of our control will impact their ability to learn. It is important to consider their unique experiences and show empathy. By identifying our own personal triggers and emotional responses, we can use affective restorative questioning to engage our students. Affective restorative questioning is an informal practice that can have a positive cumulative impact on students by prioritizing the adult student relationship over compliance. The key is to avoid focusing on the consequence of their behavior, which they will perceive as punishment. Rather, focus on what is affecting them and the behavior itself through questioning. Then, ask how you can work with them to eliminate the behavior. This practice will empower students to engage in the learning and see you as an ally. Tip number two: develop attitudes of inclusivity. Now more than ever, it is important to remember that our students' academic success is directly affected by their unique circumstances and cultural backgrounds. Reflect on your assumptions. Will my interaction cause any student to feel like an outsider? You may wish to use this as a check your assumptions checklist as you reflect. When we interact with students, are we making an assumption that they can focus over an extended period of time and persevere when faced with something challenging? How might we chunk a video or provide ways to make it interactive? When we assign a task, are we assuming that there is a mother, father, and siblings all under the same roof? Many of our students have single parents, two parents of the same gender, foster parents, extended family members, or live in homeless shelters. Some of our older students live on their own without parents at all. To what extent do we make assumptions that all of our students can afford to shop at certain locations, take vacations, and eat at restaurants? Remember, there are students who have never been on a vacation and work to care for their siblings while other family members are working outside of the house. Remember to use inclusive pronouns as often as possible. Our students' experiences with gender identity may not match our own experiences. Creating a social presence is intentional. Therefore, protocols help us to ensure that we are providing these opportunities. As you implement your own protocols, remember to consider inclusivity. For example, avoid asking about indicators of wealth, like vacation destinations. Avoid referring to dad jokes. These simple considerations ensure that no student feels like an outsider and all students feel valued in a remote environment. Tip number 4: use positive, authentic language. In a digital setting, meaning can easily be misinterpreted. For this reason, it is important to avoid sarcasm at all costs, even if you believe a student will get it. For every negative interaction, it takes 3 positive interactions to affirm a positive relationship. Consider this ratio as you interact with your students. When discussing our current remote situation, use words of hope and encouragement. Students need to trust that the adults in their lives are capable of navigating uncertain circumstances. Images can show care and positivity in a remote learning environment. In the resources section, you will find ways to use Adobe Spark and Canva to personalize your digital platform. Tip number 5: maintain professional boundaries. While we want to get to know our students and show them they are valued, we must remain professional as educators. Here are some do's and don'ts with regard to professional boundaries in educator to student relationships. In the next section, we will discuss how establishing routines provides opportunity for relationship building in a remote environment. Tip number 6: schedule consistent check ins. While we want to show students flexibility to show evidence of their learning, it is important to communicate consistency and care for their efforts. Let students know you will be checking in on them regularly using your digital platform. Provide due dates based on when you realistically plan to give feedback. Remove the 11:59 p.m. default if you do not plan to give feedback at midnight. Reach out to students who are not engaging in your curriculum. Remember to use effective restorative questioning to problem solve. Let them know their efforts are valued. Try quick polls to build culture or capture student voice. In the resources section of this module, you will find tutorials on how to use polls in Schoology and in Google Classroom. Tip number 7: set up office hours for students to connect with you when they have questions, concerns, or simply want to connect with an adult educator. This provides a safe space at a consistent time. Consider how you might collaborate with other teachers or specialists to provide multiple options. For example, all members of a secondary PLC schedule 1 hour time slots for any student in the course to check in. Remember that office hours does not equal synchronous instruction, but rather is an opportunity for students to connect for academic or SEL support. Also, remember that some students are not comfortable sharing their personal space and may not wish to reach out. Remember to consider inclusivity. You will find tutorials on Schoology conferences and Google Meets in the resources section of this module. In this module, we explored how we can develop trauma invested mind frames, reflect on personal communication, and establish routines in order to make relationship building a deliberate and ongoing practice. Now it's time for you to personalize your learning with resources supporting these tips.